So my name is Kofi Ofosu Nkansah. I'm the former Chief Executive Officer of the NEIP. NEIP is the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program. And our office had to do with supporting startups and small businesses and helping them to grow. So over the last 3 years, or let me say between 2022 and 2024, when I was in charge of NEIP, we rolled out a number of programs. Some of the programs included the Presidential Business Pitch. The Presidential Pitch is a business competition for innovators, young innovators. So we have applicants coming from all over the country to pitch to the president, showcase their ideas, their prototype, how they want to commercialize and help solve socio-economic problems of the country. We reduce the numbers to a final 30 who get cash prizes. And then the first 10 pitch to the president is a very interesting program. I think the 2019 edition also was what produced what we have today as the Chicken Man, Pizza Man. So that's one of the main successes of the NEIP program. The presidential pitch alone, created about 200 to 300 jobs. And we do visit them. We go to their office sites to see what they are doing as part of our M&E. We also rolled out the Youth in Innovative Agric, where we train young people in livestock farming and crop farming. And it will interest you to know that in the Youth in Innovative Agric, we trained 25,000 young people nationwide. We were able to support about 1,000 of them with grants, to scale their agric businesses and, to be able to grow their agric businesses. So this is how we calculate the number of jobs created. If you give, let's say, 1,000 young farmers startups, or grants for them to start their agri businesses, then you can say that at least you have created some 2,000 jobs, because if every farmer employs one or two more hands, in their poultry farm, in their onion farm, in their cassava farm, and so on and so forth, then you can easily do that quantification. So that is one of the strategies or methods we use to calculate the jobs created. We also did the Presidential Business Support. Presidential Business Support is where we provide entrepreneurship training to general businesses. You don't have any age criteria or any innovation criteria. Presidential Business Support, we trained thousands of young people in that field. And when it was possible for us to give starter packs, we gave some of them starter packs. Let me come to the major programs that we did. The program we did, which had the most impact under my tenure, the 3-year period, was the Skills for Jobs program, where we gave people training in light manufacturing skills. Light manufacturing skills refer to the making of detergents like soaps, making of creams, oil products. When you come to the catering sector, how people can do cakes, bread, and what have you, and other products that can easily be molded in the home, instead of factories. So we did a lot of this training, and nationwide we trained about 50,000 people in the light manufacturing skills. So people are able to do their own yogurts at home. People are able to do their own detergents, washing powders, and soaps for bathing, and so on at home. People are able to do catering products at home. People are able to do other textiles and garment products at home. So if you look at the Skills for Jobs alone, that is 50,000 trainees. So if each one of them is even undertaking a business venture in an area they had training in, and they even don't, recruit an extra hand, that is 50,000 jobs for you in that sector alone. We also had a training program with the Prison Service of Ghana, and we call that the Entrepreneurship for Restoration Program. And Entrepreneurship for Restoration Program, the only difference between Skills for Jobs and Entrepreneurship for restoration program is that we give the skills to prison inmates and officers this time as part of their rehabilitation, so that by the time they are leaving the prisons of the prisons, they will have one skill or the other to start their own businesses with, you know. So we went to several prison facilities in the country, in the north, in Ashanti, Eastern region, in Sawam, and then some prison facilities in central region as well. And it was very successful. So we gave them group grants and group equipment. So fridges, mixing equipment, and then processing machines for grinding, granules, cereals, and the other things that they manufacture. So they were able to manufacture some of these homemade light manufacturing products in the prisons and even use them, you know. We had 2 cohorts of that, and altogether we trained about 3,000 prison inmates and officers in these light manufacturing skills. And I'm happy to report that all those who partook in this training left the prisons with skills and, you know, starter packs sometimes with which they were going to start their own enterprises in the light manufacturing area. We had some innovation programs as well. We organized the National Innovation Challenge, where young people who are yet to commercialize their ideas were invited, and their ideas evaluated, and the best selected, and then we give them various cash rewards and prizes with which they would start commercialization of their products. We also had a collaboration with Ministry of Education that we called STEM Innovation. And STEM Innovation is basically an innovation contest for senior high school students. So our last cohort, for instance, Obuasi Sectech students brought a dialysis machine solution and they won nationwide. We had students from Gaba Gaba also went with their electrical Abubuya car, and it was an interesting sight to behold. So this is just to inculcate the culture of innovation in these young people at a very tender age, even when they are in high school, so that they will be able to build on whatever ideas they have, develop their prototypes in future with which they can commercialize to help solve socio-economic problems. We also had a greenhouse farming program where we trained thousands of young people in greenhouse. Greenhouse farming is where vegetables are grown in controlled environment, you know, not the regular open environment where animals and insects can, you know, harm the crops and the plants. So if you look at the list I've given right now, altogether we did close to 10 programs under my tenure, just the last 3 years. And I have the spreadsheet, I can share them with you with the indicators on the number of training we did in each cohort, the specific figures, and then the starter packs we gave and the grants we gave, which we use to calculate the number of jobs created altogether. So I believe over the 3-year period that I was in charge from 2022 to 2024, we created over 100,000 jobs. If I'm to add what my predecessor did, John Kuma did in the first term, then we'll be doing some 200,000 altogether. And it's our hope and expectation that the new administration will build on what we've done so far so that we can create more opportunities for startups and young businesses in the country. I even forgot to add the Kaya Empowerment Program, you know, where we trained about 4,000 young ladies, also in various skills, makeup, catering, soap making, and what have you. You know, it has become very fashionable these days for ladies to learn how to do makeup and offer their services through advertisements and promotion online. They open Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts, and they're able to onboard clients and provide these services to them. And it was exciting to see our young Kaya ladies go through these training programs in about a month. They were also given business development skills with which they will learn, from which they will learn business skills, you know, accounting skills, bookkeeping skills, marketing skills, sales skills, as part of the soft side of the business management. It was interesting to see these ladies move from the streets to start something on their own. And what was exciting about the career empowerment program was that we gave each and every participant or trainee starter packs and micro grants with which they were able to start their own business. So it is never true that we just bandied numbers about and these were not real numbers. I mean, if we were to be in charge, now, if we were to be in office, we would have done monitoring because some of the programs were done in 2024. We go on the field, measure their current performance, what they are doing. If we get additional funds and those who are doing well, we need to support them, give them additional resources. That is what we do, So the evidence is out there. And in the next few days, I'm going to start posting pictures and video evidence, some of them testimonials from participants and what they are doing currently. These are not ghosts. They are rare Ghanaians who exist. Some went back, the Career Empowerment Program, for instance, some went back to the north to start their own businesses. And some also said, well, they've started families in Accra, so they can't go back. So even if it's on tabletop, they will set up and start doing something on their own. And every now and then, I get feedback from my coordinators, bringing me pictures of young people who took advantage of some of these trainings and are still doing well in those areas. And it's very encouraging to see that even after we left office, they still come to us with some of this feedback. So the new administration, if they want, they can go and verify the people who are there. I know they've been saying bad things about the programs we did, but I would employ them to, focus on what they can also do to build on what we did. Because President Mahama has just 4 years, and if you look at the posture of their finance minister, his inertia as far as release of resources for such youth programs are concerned, they would have a very Herculean task to achieve the numbers they set for themselves, both in the innovation and the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Because they spoke of 1 million coders program, they spoke of 300,000 people in the apprenticeship program, they spoke of 10,000 people in the Adwumawura program, and all these programs are yet to properly take off. So I would employ them to focus on their deliverables, what they can do, as they wrote in their manifesto, instead of bad-mouthing, saying bad things about our programs and how it impacted on the lives of young people of Ghana, because they may not be able to do even a quarter of what we did. And all the figures I've given, the over 200,000 trained and the tens of thousands of jobs created, these are just figures from the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program. Most of the resources for entrepreneurship development went to the Ghana Enterprises Agency, from CABAS to Ghana Jobs and Skills Project to the various World Bank programs and MasterCard programs. And I'm aware that GE alone trained over 1.3 million youth in business development skills and created tens of thousands of jobs, because they had most of the resources. Commission for TVET also had some under the Ghana Skills Development Fund, and even big entrepreneurs like Tony Senaya, Ofosu Shoes, and others were publicly given checks, and there's evidence for all to see. President Kofi did a lot in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Altogether, if we are to put together what NEIP did, what GEA did, and what the Commission for TVET also did, we will be running into over 1.5 million young people trained during the 8 years that we were in power, and over 300,000 jobs created from these opportunities. If we are to divide this figure by 2 and compare it to what the Mahama administration, Mahama 2, will do this time, or even what they did the first time he was in power, the figures will be nowhere close to us. That is why I am advising advocating that they forget about what we did and focus on how they can deliver what they promised the youth of Ghana in their manifesto. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see the new NDC government being interested in any of our entrepreneurship programs. Whether it was YouStart, whether it is a presidential pitch, whether it is a youth in agri program, or career empowerment program. They are all youth training programs, but they come with their own names and models. They are talking about apprenticeship training, which under our National Youth Employment Agency, why he also did a lot. They are talking about 1 million codes. They are talking about a Adwumawura program. So I don't know how we can convince them as a former government to continue, because already we've put up 2 big hostels in Accra for training young Kayayis, in Medina and Ashama. We were just about commissioning other ones in Kumasi and Techiman, which are also hotspots for Kayayis when we just lost the election. I don't know what they are going to do with these facilities. Already they've expressed their intentions of not continuing with the Kaya Empowerment Program, for instance. So because of the lack of continuity, it's difficult to, force the government or even advise them to go back and continue with the old programs we had, because they had their own ideas on how they wanted to run the youth development programs for the young people of Ghana. They are not interested in continuing with any of the youth programs that we did, whether it was Youth Starts or Kaya Empowerment Program. But some of them have similarities, because if you talk of Youth Starts, you give training in the technical area, you give business development skills, you give startup packs, you give grants. The Adwumawura program may have similar features. You give the basic training and then grants and startup packs. So let's see what they can also do. At the end of the day, what is most important is empowering the younger people of Ghana so that they can set up their own businesses. Because as you know, we don't have enough jobs in the formal sector. Government is the biggest employer of the country, and unfortunately, government payroll run by the Controller and Accountant General is full. So we cannot continue adding on to the payroll all the time. That is why the Akufo-Addo government, brought about the YouStart, the Youth in Innovative Agri, the Career Empowerment Program, and the many other entrepreneurship interventions, which gave training to over 1 million young people of Ghana and gave them resources to start their own businesses. So, you see, when I was speaking earlier, I said we have the KIAs in certain parts of the country. When they migrate or they move from the north, some go to the Techiman area, some go to Kumasi, and the rest come to Accra. And we are talking about empowering those people who are there already. Some may never go back. They have moved, rural urban migration. They have migrated from the north to the south, and they may not move again. So what do? You empower them and give them resources and the capacity to be able to start their own businesses or enterprises so that they can reintegrate into the society. Those who are in the north and are yet to come, they are just like any other young people in any part of the country. Just as we rolled out YouStart, presidential business support, skills for jobs, and all the other programs in various regions, those in the north also took advantage of the programs that we had in Tamale, Bolgawa, and those parts of the country. So that is for them. But we cannot say you are Kaya, you migrated from Walwale, so go back to Walwale before you take advantage of this program. That may not work. So we targeted the highly or the densely populated Kaya areas, communities where Kaya. That is why even when we were citing the hostels, we cited them in Medina and Ashama. Because if you analyze the demography of Accra, those are 2 areas that you have a lot of Kaya sleeping in kiosks and other areas. So that is the idea. That is the idea, and I think it worked. Even though after giving them the training, some were motivated to go back home, but those who still stayed in Accra still had the skills and the toolkits, what we call the starter packs, to be able to start their own businesses. So I don't think it does any harm to the program. The fact that the hostels were built in Accra and they were given the training here. So we have this tax exemption collaboration with the Ghana Revenue Authority, and it goes to young people who are less than 30 years and have run businesses not more than 5 years. So you are tax exempt the first 5 years of the businesses. So what we do is that you bring the application to the NEIP, and then we will forward it to the relevant offices at GRA, the relevant units at GRA, and then they will work on them. And when we had the U-Start launch at UPSA Auditorium, for instance, there was this young entrepreneur from Nkansah who came to, testify how NEIP exemption in the first time helped him to do some savings when he imported some equipment from abroad to be able to process his tissue. He's into paper processing, you know, but it's not widely known by a lot of people. And it is one of the reasons why we were working on a startup act, to regulate the entire small business and startup sector, to provide them exemptions, to provide them incentives, so that every startup, anybody who qualifies as a technology or innovation oriented business, which is scalable and does not employ more than 50 people, and whose starting capital is not more than 1 million. These are the basic requirements we used to define a startup. Any company or business in this bracket or range can qualify to go to NEIP for a startup certificate. Once you are given the certificate, then it will qualify you for certain exemptions to run your businesses, and they would also have to follow certain regulatory requirements, just as we've had exemptions under 1D1F, our automotive policies, where semi-knockdown vehicles were allowed to be imported and then assembled here and all that. So we funded over the draft Startup Act to the new administration. We hope they continue working on it to finalize it, to pass it, and get it assented by the president. So that just as we have in other mature ecosystems like India and even some in Africa like Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, and others, they have proper innovation agencies which regulate startups, give them support and incentives, and make sure startups are thriving. Because startups are scalable. When you get 10 startups, they can change the face of a whole economy. The Silicon Valley examples are there to guide us. The successful Facebook, WhatsApp, Google, Apple, all these were startups which were supported by the American government, and today they are controlling the world. Nothing happens by chance in this world. So it is proper to have a regulatory framework, to regulate startups properly, to run programs for them, to give them incentives, tax breaks, to ensure that those who have the potential to grow are given the needed government support. And sometimes when government comes in, they're even able to connect them to angel investors and other private investors for them to do well. So that just as over the last 8 years, we're able to get local companies to do the Ghana Post GPS, for instance, for us, get local tech companies to do the Ghana card for us. We could get more local tech-oriented companies to provide services to support our economy. And even export sale, export the technology solutions and products to the sub-region. We have a West African sub-regional market of about 400 million, and even take advantage of AFTA to export to the entire African continent, because we have an African regional market of over 1.3 billion. And this is a huge market with huge potential. So if we position ourselves as a hub for startups, as a hub for technology-oriented solutions, we're able to grow our economy through export of, technology-oriented solutions and products, so that Ghana will become the preferred destination for, products that startups offer. So when you are under 35 years and your business is not more than 5 years, you don't pay any corporate tax at all. You don't pay any corporate tax, so you're 100% exempt. I don't know if it has been revised now, but this was what the arrangement that we had with the Ghana Revenue Agency. Yeah, Revenue Authority. I think the Adwumawura program from the Mahama 2 government just looks at like the Youth Start program that we had. Because as I said earlier, it will give them business development training, it will give them technical training, whatever skills areas they want to take, whether it is textiles and garment fashion, whether it is the artisanal areas like masonry, carpentry, electrical, or whatever. That is what we had with our interventions. We had the technical training and then the business development training, which will give you the soft skills for you to manage your businesses well when you start setting up. And then we will follow it up with grants. So it just looks like the Youth Start program that we have. The name doesn't change anything. We are wishing them well and hoping they will be able to carry out their target of training 10,000 people. But if you compare their target of 10,000 to what we did, skills for jobs alone, we did 50,000 at NEIP, and even that was woefully inadequate because of free SHS and more people going into the tertiary institutions. We are unable to absorb all these graduates, both from the secondary level and the tertiary level, into formal sector employment, both private and public. So government has to scale up the opportunities it is giving young people in the business support sector. I don't think 10,000 is enough for even 1 year, but they targeted 10,000 for a whole 4 years. It will be woefully inadequate. There were times that Youth Employment Agency, during our time, gave 15,000 startups to young people who had undergone apprenticeship training at a time. At Independence Square, Blaster Square in Accra, and then at another time at Techiman. I think one was 15,000 and the other time was 10,000. So this is 25,000 in just 2024. So if you are targeting training just 10,000 people for the whole 4 years, I know they have apprenticeship, codes program, and other programs, but I think it's woefully inadequate. And looking at how they've started, I mean, if you target training 1 million youth in coding, software development, and the first year is almost ending, that is 25% of the 4 years, and you are not doing even 100,000, you are not doing even 10,000, then how are you going to reach your milestone of 1 million targets in 4 years? So I doubt they will be able to, achieve these targets that they set for themselves in their manifesto. I doubt it very much. They've not shown that commitment and seriousness, at least in this first year. But I hear the budget will be read in November. Let's wait and see the importance they will attach to it in the next budget. Well, I think the government is over-fixated on the macroeconomic indicators. As much as it is important to have exchange rates, doing well, to have inflation go down, to have interest rate and all the macroeconomic indicators doing well, we shouldn't be over-fixated on it. For instance, to be pumping forex, from our reserves. We are lucky now. We are told good prices have shot up about 400 times higher than what we had when we were in power. So that is helping the government to save some reserves, with which they are flooding the market and sustaining the city. It is good, but what are they doing to stimulate production in the economy? The government is not spending. If inflation is 9.5% and you are not paying contractors, you are not paying road contractors, you are not spending on your flagship programs like in Nkete, 24-hour economy, and it is not stimulating production in the economy for young people to get jobs, then what is the point? I'm not sure they've done much to reduce unemployment since they took over. So I would urge the Mahama administration to spend more. There should be a balance between not spending to control economic indicators and spending to stimulate production, which will result in job creation. Because at the end of the day, if you have all the beautiful figures, exchange rates coming down, inflation coming down, interest rates coming down, all the macroeconomic indicators doing well, and the young people are home not getting jobs because government, which is the number one spender, is not putting money in the right sectors of the economy for us to get production, then what is the point? I mean, we had Unemployment Graduate Association created the last time President Mahama was in government. We don't want to see it happening again. From the look of things, they don't have much on the employment space. I'm just hoping that in the next budget, they'll prioritize it and rather push resources into the various programs which will stimulate job creation instead of focusing on macroeconomic indicators, which don't necessarily create jobs. Well, I think our biggest challenge was inadequate resources because we had almost every program oversubscribed. You put an application on a portal for young people to apply and enter a program, whether it is You Start, whether it is presidential pitch, whether it's presidential business support, whether it is youth in an agric, or even the career empowerment program. Sometimes you have space for 2,000 people and 10,000 people will be applying. So what is the solution? Government has to um, dedicate more resources for business support and entrepreneurship development. And there should be equitable distribution of resources between the entrepreneurship support agencies. You know, at the moment we have NEIP, we have Maslow, and Ghana Enterprises Agency. I think based on the mandate of each of these agencies, Maslow focuses on the very, very micro tabletop enterprises, the small ones. NEIP does more startups and technology and innovation oriented companies, whilst GEA does the wholesale enterprise support across all sectors of the economy. It doesn't matter whether you're into basket weaving or smoke weaving or whatever. So government should schedule the resources and plan them well based on the various focus areas of the entrepreneurship support agencies so that each of them will get enough resources. And I don't think government resources will ever be enough. So there's a need for a deepening of relationship with multilateral and bilateral organizations, the external organizations who are development partners, the EU, USAID, JICA, and what have you, Danida, and the rest, because they also have high interest in youth development and entrepreneurship support so that we can get more resources to support our young people and reduce unemployment. Well, I think the government hasn't prioritized Galamsey this first year. Why am I saying that? Because President Mahama had a plan in opposition. If you remember, when President Akufo-Addo in October 2024 asked for President Mahama's solution to Galamsey, he referred him to a conference at the University of Energy and Natural Resources, where President Mahama spoke about his Galamsey interventions should he get the power to become the president of Ghana. And these interventions included a mining center of excellence, which will be created by the University of Energy and Natural Resources and University of Mines and Technology to come out with best practices on best ways of mining to save our environment sustainably, sustainable ways of mining. They spoke about a revolving fund in partnership with the private sector, especially the mining companies, to provide shared services, to provide shared infrastructure for miners, artisanal miners, so that they won't go about destroying the environment. They also spoke about deploying technology, especially artificial intelligence, in their, fight against Galamsey. They spoke about decentralizing the licensing regime for miners, bringing EPA, Minerals Commission officers, bringing on board the chiefs. They also spoke about geomining, geomapping, so that they would delineate specific areas for mining activities instead of the small-scale miners, just destroying our environment all over. These are excellent plans, but I didn't see any budgetary allocations for them in the first Mahama budget. What they are doing now is the firefighting that we've tried over the years, which didn't work. The blue water gas and then deploying the military there. As soon as they leave, then the youth will go back to the small-scale mining or the Galamsey. These solutions that I've just mentioned have similarities with Dr. Bamia's mining solution. So it means our leaders have the solutions. But what is left is the implementation. And what is used for implementation is resources. So I would expect to see more funds being allocated in the 2026 budget for the fight against Galamsey, so that it doesn't just become lip service. Because at this stage, they're just relying on national security budget to deploy the blue water gas and then some army people around the water bodies. As soon as you leave, they will come back. But if you're able to, fence designated areas that this is where you are allowed to mine, as the mining companies do, then the young people will have an alternative to go there. We cannot give them alternative livelihoods in farming and other agric areas, because the farming and those alternative livelihood interventions we are proposing don't give them even 10% of what they get through mining. Mining is very lucrative. Now, gold prices are at all-time high. So once they will get the money, they will go back and done when you are not there. That is why I think as a nation, just as we have perimeters for the mining companies where they do their mining activities and nobody goes there, and this is the environment that, or land, that we have allocated to them. Even though they are supposed to use sustainable practices to do the mining, we've allocated those areas to them. So nobody goes there to do anything there. Now, because we've not done the proper allocation to our small-scale mining, that is why they are mining in the water bodies and other areas that they are not supposed to mine. And all these solutions are in both the NPP and NDC solution post-2024 to solve small-scale mining. But it takes money and resources to implement these things. You need the Geological Survey Department to install satellites, to mine, to do prospecting, to identify rich areas where we can give. I don't think we should, lease all our lands to international mining companies who will come and get our gold and just give us corporate tax, which is not enough. God has given us the resources. God has given us the gold. If our young people are doing it and they are not doing it well, let's give them a properly allocated area which is rich in the gold, so that with the provision of shared infrastructure like the gold catcher, which is mercury-free and can be used for sustainable gold price practices, which will not stain our environment or destroy our water bodies or pollute them, then we can manage them, supervise them well, and ensure that they are undertaking sustainable mining practices in well-designated areas. I think if we're able to chart this course, we'll be able to solve the galamsey menace. State of emergency, yes, it can be. State of emergency can happen around the water areas. We can implement it in the water area. So if it is River Yensu, around which people are mining illegally, you can declare a state of emergency there and then deploy the soldiers there to prevent other people. I'm not for a nationwide state of emergency, but for areas where the Ghana Water Company, for instance, is unable to process water because turbidity levels have gone beyond 5,000, far beyond the acceptable NTU level of 500. Then you know that we are in crisis areas. I know of Kwenyapo in Central Region, which supplies about 10 municipalities in the Central Region, as well as some water treatment plants belonging to the Ghana Water Company in Eastern Region, where they are unable to process water now because of high turbidity levels. I think for those areas, we should declare a state of emergency around those water bodies as a stopgap measure, as a temporary measure, so that at least we will save the water for the communities which rely on those water bodies. Because as it is now, until the turbidity levels come down and the particles in the water, which prevents processing and production by the plants, are reversed, it means our people there won't get drinking water. Well, I support Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bamia's candidature for obvious reasons. He's the most marketed, the most formidable, and the most disciplined candidate that we have now. If you look at the history of our fourth Republican era, aside Jerry Rawlings, who came through a military coup and later became a democratically elected government in 92 and 96. We've not had any president who has won election once, especially after the 8-year cycle, So I think Dr. Bawumia has been marketed. He's the most successful vice president with over 33 interventions, including the gold purchase program, which is being touted by the current administration as one of the interventions which has saved our currency. How he talks about the fourth industrial revolution and even leverage it as the number 2% of the land to help us solve various socioeconomic problems like delivery of vital medical supplies and other interventions. I think he's somebody that we have to trust with. People think we should change him because of the issues we had, especially in the second term. But I disagree with them because all over the world, we had about 80% of the 60 incumbent governments who went for elections in 2024 losing. The conservatives of the United Kingdom, after 14 years in power, lost, and they had their worst parliamentary defeat since their democracy started, just as we had ours, because grocery prices had gone up because of high inflationary figures and all that. The Democrats, just after one term, also lost in the United States of America. The Christian Democrats of Germany also lost. So the post-COVID supply chain disruptions and external issues affected us. Of course, in addition to some economic policies that we implemented, like the debt exchange program, which was necessitated by difficulties we encountered post-COVID. The young people didn't like the idea of e-levy and then the betting tax. And we are all very much aware that all these reasons contributed to our defeat. So why do we want to blame the number 2 man and not even the number 1? Even for Nandama, I won't support the idea of blaming him, because we as a government, every member of the government had a role to play in the government. And we all have our own individual portions in the defeat. So we don't have to blame one person. When you come to the party structure too, same, from the general secretary to the last officer at the polling station, we may have gotten certain opportunities that we didn't share equitably with our party people. And some of them were angry. We had a party, some decided not to go and vote because of how they were treated and all that. So what is good now is that Dr. Bawumia, being part of this government, has learned the lessons and he has documented them. And he's going to leverage technology to solve most of these programs, both externally and internally. The external ones are, how he's going to come out with new fiscal policies to make sure we don't spend beyond our limits and all that. The internal ones are how he's going to set up a welfare system to make sure any opportunities which comes internally is shared equitably to party people. How the party people are going to be part of the appointment process. Each constituency is going to propose 10 people to get appointed so that there will be equity in the distribution of appointments and every constituency or district will get their due. If you look at his tax reforms, how he wants a flat tax rate, how he wants Ghana's taxes, import duty on automobiles to be like the Togo one, which is the best in the sub-region, and all these business reforms that he talks about, his job creation agenda, his ideas to create about 4 million jobs through the Jobs Abroad program, through, interventions in the mining sector, through his 1 million, ICT training program, where people will be trained in business process outsourcing areas. They could be in Ghana, and then we offering BPO services to North America, Europe, and other countries who like it, just like the Asians are doing it in India and other countries in the East. I think he has a plan, And if you go out there and you speak to people, when they are talking about the next election, they already mentioned Dr. Bawumia. It's as if it's a foregone conclusion that the MPP is bringing him, because he's the one on the lips of every Ghanaian when it comes to talking about MPP candidates, the most successful vice president, the most marketed candidate in our primaries, and I think he will do the job as president. That is why I'm supporting him. We are hoping that 31st January will come soon, and then we can get some unity and cohesion in our party. Dr. Bawumia has a lot of policy interventions which will help the grassroots. For instance, he wants to do a constituency-based budgeting, which is similar to the $1 million constituency program that we had implemented by IPEP. People think that program was not successful, but it was fairly or largely successful because every community had a market, a borehole, a clinic, or some other projects, constructed for them, whether through the Northern Development Authority, Middle Belt, or Coastal Development Authority. And this government has handed over that to the various district assemblies to complete uncompleted projects that we had under the NEIP projects. Now, going forward, Dr. Bamia hopes to do a constituency-based budget where every constituency will have specific allocations based on their local needs. And then there will be direct allocation through the district assembly common fund to ensure that every community is getting enough share of their budgets. And then he also wants to set up a regional economic enclave or a regional free zone space for every region. What is this going to do? It's going to ensure that industries come and site, their business, whether it is agri-processing, whether it is pharmaceuticals, whether it is textiles and government. The various manufacturing industries will come and site companies, in the various regions and localities so that locals there will get enough jobs to do. And of course, when it comes to the ICT program for the BPO sector and all that, the mining interventions, the abroad program, he's going to share the opportunities equitably across all the regions to make sure that every locality becomes part of these national interventions, which will help reduce the unemployment program that we have had. Well, I have not done a study on how polls influence voting. But as a politician, this is how I'll treat every poll. You treat them as a check on the campaign you are doing. So if the polls come out and they say that you are leading, it should encourage you to continue with your campaign. Yeah, so if the polls come out and they are in your favor, it should encourage you to work hard or even harder to continue leading, as we are having from the global info analytics and other posters currently. If the polls come out and they put you behind, it should also encourage you to work to overtake whoever is ahead of you. So as a politician, that is how I approach these polls, if you ask me about it. I don't think it will be a challenge for us uniting because the NPP has always had competitive primaries, competitive internal elections, right from 1992, when we had the likes of Professor Dubois, Kofi, Johnny Selby, Dr. Addison, and others. We came together after the primaries. It repeated in 96. And then in 1998, we had the Sunyani primaries, where we had even J.H. Mensah going against his own brother-in-law. They threw salvos at each other, but the party came united to prosecute a good campaign for the 2000 elections, and we won. We had Comrade Japan, for instance, then being one of the leading members of then candidate Akufo-Addo's campaign. But when President Akufo won, in uniting the party for government, he appointed Comrade Japan as the press secretary, which was a cabinet position. Over the years, we've seen President Akufo-Addo also appoint Alan Kyerematen then as a member of his cabinet, even when they competed fiercely during the primary. So I have no doubt whatsoever that we'll be able to achieve unity post January 31st, 2026. Movement for change, their target is MPP, because Alan Kyerematen failed in securing the mandate as MPP candidate. I think they are just doing everything to scatter our fortunes, to put sand in our gari, as they say in the local parlance. But we also what he got in the last election, 0.28%. He was even beaten by Sheda. So we don't see them as a threat. I mean, it is a democracy. Every individual have the right, and under our 1992 constitution, to form their own party and to compete in any election. So Alan Kyerematen and his people who left the MPP have that right. But I do not think they pose any threats. I mean, in the Fourth Republic, we have a lot of parties springing out of mother parties. In MPP, we had UGM, led by Rekun Bogbe. It didn't affect our fortunes. In NDC, we had the National Democratic Party, we had the Reform Party, and other smaller parties come out of the NDC. It didn't affect NDC. When they failed, they went back to their mother party, So I know Alan is doing this just to scatter all the fortunes of the NPP because he couldn't secure the mandate to lead us and to become president. But I mean, I think whatever happened to him was self-inflicted because of how he conducted his internal politics. It's unfortunate he left, but I don't think forming UP Plus or UP or whatever movement under the butterfly logo can change our fortunes or affect us in any way. I don't think so. I will urge the party to solidly behind Dr. Bawumia, unite behind Dr. Bawumia, because from what he did as vice president, he is the most promising candidate who can win us the election. We have the advantage of presenting an already marketed candidate against a new candidate from the NDC. Since President Mahama has exhausted his 2-year tenure and he can't contest again, we should not let this opportunity slip by bringing a new candidate so that we'll be on the same level of NDC to now go and market our candidate. He's a clean politician with no integrity issues. He doesn't have any corruption issues. He uses good language to communicate. And we think that if we all unite behind him as a candidate, we'll be able to secure power from the NDC in 2028. Thank you very much.